It was a rainy October morning in Baltimore. Barbara Clark was methodically arranging paintings for a new exhibition in her small gallery in the Fells Point neighborhood. Her movements were honed by years of practice. Each canvas was placed at a precise distance from the next, perfectly aligned along an invisible line. Controlling these details gave her the illusion of control over her own life, which had fallen apart exactly 1 year ago when James had packed his things and left. "Coffee as usual, Barb?" asked her assistant, an intern from the local art college. "Yes, please. And check if we've received confirmation from Marcus about his installation." Outwardly, Barbara Clark was the picture of professionalism and composure. In the year since her divorce, she had increased sales at the gallery by 30%, attracted new artists, even lost 8 pounds, and changed her hairstyle. "The divorce has done her good," her friends said. But they didn't see her scrolling through James's social media every night, sometimes until dawn. During her lunch break, sitting in the tiny office behind the gallery, Barbara opened Instagram out of habit and froze. The photo had appeared in her feed just 15 minutes ago, but had already garnered hundreds of likes. James and a woman with chestnut hair stood against the backdrop of the harbor, her left hand with a ring raised to the camera. The caption read, "She said yes. I can't believe I'm going to share my life with this amazing woman." Engagement. Happiness. Barbara's fingers froze over the screen for a moment, then began to scroll down quickly, exploring the account of the woman tagged in the photo. Rebecca Hill, curator of a contemporary art museum, Princeton graduate, loves hiking and old movies, 31 years old. Barbara felt nauseous. She closed her phone and mechanically finished her coffee, which had suddenly become bitter. Exactly 1 hour later, she called Sophia. "Did you see it?" she asked instead of saying hello. "Hi, Barb." "Saw what?" Sophia's voice sounded wary. "He's engaged. To some museum rat." The pause on the other end was more eloquent than any words. "Listen," Sophia finally said. "Let's meet tonight. I'll be done with clients at 6. In a small coffee shop near the harbor, Sophia watched her friend with the professional interest of a psychologist and the personal concern of a friend. Barbara spoke quickly. Her movements were sharp and nervous. She kept fixing her hair. "A year, Sophia. Just a year after our divorce, and he's already marrying someone else. Do you understand what that means? He was seeing her while we were still together. I always knew something was going on, but he denied it." "Barbara, you can't know that for sure," Sophia gently objected. "Sometimes people need time to recover, and sometimes new relationships develop faster than—" "Don't defend him," Barbara cut her off. "You were at our wedding. You saw him swear eternal love and fidelity. Eternal, Sophia." The psychologist inside Sophia noticed alarming signs: fixation on the past, selective perception, categorical judgments. But the friend inside her saw just a wounded woman. "How long have you been following his social media?" Sophia asked after a pause. "I'm not following him," Barbara replied too quickly. "I just check sometimes. It's normal." "What about your dates? You mentioned that you started seeing someone a month ago." Barbara waved her hand dismissively. "It didn't work out. He was too—" She hesitated, searching for the right word. "Boring. Not like James." Sophia noticed how every conversation inevitably led back to her friend's ex-husband. It wasn't the first time this had happened in the past year, but for the first time, Barbara's eyes showed something new: cold determination. "You know," Barbara said, stirring her cold coffee, "I should probably meet her, this Rebecca. We're all adults, and since she's going to be part of James's life, maybe we should try to get along." Sophia suppressed a feeling of unease. This sudden shift from rage to rational planning was uncharacteristic of the emotional Barbara. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" she asked cautiously. "Absolutely." Barbara smiled with icy calm. "I'm moving on, just like him." On her way home, Barbara made a detour. Her route strangely led her to a residential complex in the Harbor East area, where James now lived. She parked across the street and sat in her car for almost an hour, watching the windows of his fourth-floor apartment. At 9 o'clock, the windows lit up. He had returned home. 20 minutes later, a woman's silhouette flashed in the window. Barbara took out her phone and took several photos, then opened her notes, where she kept records of James's daily routine, adding a new line, Oct. 21, at home with R from 9 p.m. Returning to her apartment, Barbara went straight to the closet in the bedroom. Hidden behind rows of neatly hung dresses was a cardboard box. It contained things James had left behind when he moved out: an old college t-shirt, a pair of cufflinks, an architecture book with his notes in the margins. Barbara took out the t-shirt and pressed it to her face, breathing deeply. James's scent had long since faded, but it still lingered in her imagination. She folded the t-shirt neatly and put the box back in its place. Then she opened her laptop and began typing Rebecca Hill's name into the search bar. Information is power. And Barbara now needed any form of power over a situation that had completely spiraled out of her control a year ago when James had packed his things and left. Sunlight streamed through the panoramic windows of James's apartment, illuminating the architectural drawings spread out on the large table. Rebecca, wrapped in his bathrobe, placed 2 cups of coffee next to the plans. "Do you like it?" James asked, pointing to the sketch of the house. "I think a sloped roof would look better on this site, given the surrounding landscape." Rebecca leaned over, studying the details. "I like this patio. I can imagine us having breakfast there on weekends." James hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "In a year or a year and a half, we can start building. First the wedding, then the dream house." Their plans were coming together like a perfect architectural composition. A wedding in the spring, then the purchase of a plot of land outside the city, where James would build their own house. Rebecca was considering a move to a management position at the museum. James was working on a major project to renovate a historic district in Baltimore. "By the way, your mom called," Rebecca said. "She wants to discuss the wedding guest list. Have you," she hesitated, "decided about Barbara?" James sighed, stepping away from the blueprints. "I don't think that's a good idea. We didn't part on the best of terms. But it's been a year. Maybe she's gotten over it and will be happy for you?" "You don't know Barbara." James shook his head. "She's complicated. When I told her I was leaving, she called me every hour for a week. Then she threatened to throw all my architecture awards off the balcony. And then suddenly she became completely calm, as if nothing had happened." Rebecca frowned. "That sounds unstable." "She's just emotional, and she's used to controlling everything around her." James kissed Rebecca on the forehead. "Don't worry, it's in the past." On Saturday morning, Baltimore's inner harbor was full of people. Rebecca and James strolled along the waterfront, discussing the exhibition they had just visited. "I think the curator took the theme of urban transformation too literally," Rebecca said. "I would have emphasized the contrasts rather than the chronology." James opened his mouth to reply, but suddenly froze mid-sentence. Rebecca followed his gaze and saw a woman standing at the entrance to a cafe about 30 feet away from them. Elegantly dressed, with a bob of dark hair, she was looking straight at them with a look of surprise on her face. "Barbara," James breathed. Before Rebecca could say anything, the woman walked toward them, giving them a broad smile. "James, what a coincidence. I was just about to have breakfast." Her gaze shifted to Rebecca, lingering a second longer than propriety demanded. "And you must be Rebecca. I saw the photos of your engagement on Instagram. Congratulations." "Thank you," Rebecca replied, instinctively moving closer to James. "Nice to meet you, Barbara." "How are you?" James asked tensely. "How's the gallery?" "Everything's great. I just signed a contract with 2 new artists. You should come by sometime. I'm sure you'll like the new exhibition." James nodded with a forced smile. "I will, but we're in a bit of a hurry right now. We have a meeting with a florist," Rebecca quickly added. "For the wedding." Barbara's eyes darkened for a moment, but her smile remained. Of course I won't keep you. It was nice to meet you, Rebecca. When Barbara walked away, Rebecca noticed how James's shoulders relaxed. She seems nice, Rebecca said uncertainly. Yes, she knows how to make that impression. James took Rebecca's hand and led her further along the promenade. Let's go. We really should hurry. But we don't have an appointment with the florist. I know, he replied quietly. I just wanted to finish the conversation. Barbara walked to her car, parked 2 blocks from the harbor. Her smile disappeared, replaced by a frown. The meeting was not accidental. After she discovered Rebecca's mention of plans to visit the exhibition on social media, Barbara deliberately came to the harbor in the hope of accidentally meeting the couple. Seeing them together, she felt a sharp pang of jealousy. The way James held Rebecca's hand, his gentle gaze directed at her, all these little things that once belonged to her. Barbara couldn't help but notice that Rebecca was younger, with her chestnut curls and sincere smile. The standard replacement for a man in midlife crisis, she thought bitterly. Sitting in the car, Barbara didn't start the engine. Instead, she took out her phone and opened the Notes app, writing, November 12, 11:30 a.m., Harbor with R. She's wearing his sapphire ring. Walk after Morris's exhibition. Over the next week, Barbara accidentally found herself in the same places as the couple. On Wednesday, she went to the same cafe where they had lunch, sitting at a table in the far corner. On Friday, she went to the movie theater where James and Rebecca were watching the evening show. Barbara sat a few rows behind them, watching not the screen, but James hugging Rebecca and whispering something in her ear. She recorded each encounter in her notes, creating a detailed map of their daily routine and habits. She learned that on Tuesdays, Rebecca worked late at the museum, and James usually had dinner at an Italian restaurant near his office. On weekends, they often visited the farmers' market in Hampton, buying fresh produce and flowers. The following Wednesday, Barbara decided to take a bolder step. Waiting for James to leave the architecture firm's office, she accidentally bumped into him in the parking lot. James, it's you again. Baltimore sometimes seems like such a small town, doesn't it? The look on his face clearly showed that he didn't believe in the coincidence of this meeting. Barbara, he nodded. What are you doing here? I was meeting with a potential client nearby. He's a collector, interested in contemporary painting. James shifted from foot to foot, clearly feeling uncomfortable. Listen, Barb, we need to clear this up. These chance encounters. What are you talking about? She interrupted, feigning surprise. I saw you at the movie theater on Friday, and at the cafe last week, and now you're here, even though there aren't any galleries nearby. Barbara felt herself blushing with embarrassment and anger. Are you following me? That's absurd, James. We live in the same city. It's not surprising that we run into each other sometimes. James sighed. Barbara, please. I want you to be happy and move on, just like me. But these encounters aren't helping either of us. I am moving on, she snapped. I have my own life, James. Not everything revolves around you. He looked at her with sympathy, which only fueled her anger. Fine, but let's just give each other some space, okay? Barbara pressed her lips into a thin line, then nodded. Whatever you say. Say hi to your museum rat. She turned and walked away quickly, her cheeks burning with humiliation. He thinks he can just write me out of his life, pulsed through her head. That evening, James told Rebecca about the encounter. Is she really watching us? Rebecca asked, nervously twirling a strand of hair around her finger. That's a little scary. She just can't let go of the past, James sighed. She's always been possessive. Maybe we should change our routes, or talk to her friend, the psychologist. James shook his head. I don't think it's that serious. I talked to her, and I think she understands. Barbara may be emotional, but she's not stupid. But she called me a museum rat, Rebecca pointed out. That doesn't seem like a sign of healthy boundaries to me. She's just angry, James hugged Rebecca. It will pass. Give her some time. Rebecca didn't look convinced, but she nodded. I hope you're right. The cold November wind blew fallen leaves across the sidewalks of Baltimore as Barbara opened the door to her art gallery. 3 days had passed since James had publicly humiliated her by accusing her of spying. For 3 days, she hadn't left her apartment, replaying their conversation over and over in her head, coming up with the perfect responses she should have given, but couldn't formulate in the heat of the moment. "You look tired," her assistant remarked as she handed her morning coffee. "Is everything okay?" "Just a lot of work with the new exhibition," Barbara dismissed. "By the way, has there been any response from Baltimore Magazine? They were going to write about us in the December issue." Immersed in her work routine, Barbara was almost able to push thoughts of James and Rebecca out of her mind. Almost. When she checked her email on her work computer at lunchtime, her gaze caught on a familiar name in a mailing list for the local cultural community. Rebecca Hill and the Baltimore Museum of Contemporary Art invite you to the opening of the exhibition Transformations of Urban Space. Barbara opened the invitation. The exhibition was starting in 2 weeks. At the end of the announcement was a small addition. Following the official opening, there will be a private reception for friends and colleagues, where we will also celebrate the engagement of our curator Rebecca Hill and renowned architect James Foster. Barbara scrolled down the page, rereading that line over and over. An engagement party, at the museum, with Rebecca's colleagues and, probably, James's partners from the architecture firm. With everyone, except her. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Was there any way she could get an invitation? She quickly dismissed the idea. After their last meeting, it would be too obvious. But what if the idea took shape gradually, like an image developing on photographic paper? Barbara closed the mailing list and opened the museum's website. Rebecca Hill was listed as the curator of several exhibitions. Her email address was listed in the contact section. "This is a professional inquiry," Barbara told herself as she composed the letter. In it, she introduced herself as a gallery owner interested in potentially collaborating with the museum to promote local artists. "Perhaps we could discuss this over a cup of coffee?" the letter concluded. After sending the message, Barbara leaned back in her chair. Rebecca most likely knew who she was and might ignore the letter. But if she was really as nice and professional as she seemed, she might agree to a meeting out of politeness or genuine interest in collaboration. To Barbara's surprise, a reply came 2 hours later. "Dear Ms. Clark, thank you for your message. The idea of collaboration sounds interesting. I could meet with you next Tuesday at 11 a.m. at the Artemis Cafe next to the museum. Sincerely, Rebecca Hill." Barbara read the reply several times, trying to catch the subtext. Was it just professional courtesy or naivety? Did James know about it? In any case, the door was ajar. Barbara arrived at the Artemis Cafe on Tuesday, 15 minutes before the appointed time. She chose a table by the window and ordered tea, mentally rehearsing the conversation ahead. Rebecca arrived at 11 sharp, dressed in an elegant dark blue dress and a light coat. "Miss Clark?" She extended her hand for a handshake. "It's nice to meet you in a more formal setting. Please call me Barbara." She smiled in response, noting to herself that Rebecca did not pretend not to know who she was. Their conversation began with a discussion of the Baltimore art scene and opportunities for collaboration. Barbara listened attentively, nodded, and even took notes, playing the role of an interested professional. "We have several artists who would be a great fit for your upcoming exhibition," Barbara said, smoothly steering the conversation in the right direction. "By the way, I heard there will be a special celebration after the opening. Congratulations on your engagement." Rebecca's smile became a little tense. "Thank you. Yes, James and I have decided to celebrate with friends and colleagues." "That's wonderful." Barbara paused, as if choosing her words. "Listen, I understand that our situation is unusual, and our last meeting with James was awkward. I want you to know that I am genuinely happy for both of you." Rebecca looked at her searchingly. "That's very generous of you. You know, divorce is difficult," Barbara continued, with calculated vulnerability in her voice. It took me a while to let go of the past, but now I'm really moving on. And I don't want there to be any awkwardness between us, especially since we move in the same professional circles. The ice in Rebecca's eyes began to melt. I appreciate your candor, Barbara. James told me about your relationship. It's never easy to let go of something important. Exactly. Barbara smiled softly. And since we're starting with a clean slate, perhaps you'd like to visit my gallery sometime? I have a wonderful collection of works by artists from the Chesapeake Bay region. I could show you some exclusive pieces that haven't been exhibited publicly yet. The offer was professionally sound, and Rebecca paused before nodding. That sounds interesting. Maybe next week? Perfect, Barbara said, taking out her business card. Here is the gallery's address and my personal number. Call me when you are free. As they said goodbye, Barbara felt a pleasant excitement at having successfully completed her task. The first step had been taken. Contact had been established. Rebecca was exactly as she had imagined, trusting and inclined to see the best in people. That same day, Sophia invited Barbara to dinner. They met at a small Italian restaurant in Little Italy, where Sophia immediately noticed a change in her friend's mood. "You look happy," she remarked, studying Barbara with the professional eye of a psychologist. "Did something happen?" "Just a good day," Barbara replied, studying the menu. "There may be an interesting collaboration with the museum in the works." "The Museum of Contemporary Art?" Sophia raised an eyebrow. "The one where Rebecca works?" Barbara shrugged. Baltimore is a small town, especially in art circles. Sophia put down the menu and looked closely at her friend. "Barbara, I've known you for almost 10 years, and for the last year, I've been watching you get stuck." "What are you talking about?" "You know what I'm talking about. How you can't let go of James. How you followed them, accidentally meeting them in different places." Barbara tensed up. "It was a misunderstanding. I explained it to James." "That's not the only thing," Sophia interrupted gently. "It's about how you still keep his things, how you check his social media every day, how all our conversations somehow come back to him." Barbara felt a surge of anger. "Are you following me? Reading my personal notes?" "No, of course not," Sophia shook her head. "But I see a pattern, and as your friend and as a psychologist, I'm concerned." "You don't need to analyze me," Barbara snapped. "I'm fine. In fact, I just met with Rebecca and we had a wonderful professional conversation." Sophia froze. "You met with Rebecca? Why?" "To discuss collaboration between the gallery and the museum. It's my job, Sophia." "And that's the only reason?" Barbara held her friend's gaze. "Of course. What else could it be?" Sophia sighed. "Barbara, sometimes after a divorce, people go through a stage of denial or fixation. It's normal, but it's important to be aware of it and work through it." "I am working through it," Barbara replied coldly. "I'm moving on. Meeting Rebecca is part of the acceptance process. I even invited her to visit the gallery." "You invited her to your place?" Sophia's voice now sounded clearly concerned. "To the gallery," Barbara corrected her. "It's a public place, Sophia. Don't dramatize it." The rest of the dinner was tense. Barbara felt that Sophia didn't believe her, but it didn't matter. The plan was taking shape, and she didn't need doubters around her. The next day, Rebecca called and suggested visiting the gallery on Thursday afternoon. Barbara agreed, feeling a rush of adrenaline from anticipation. That evening, she carefully thought through every detail of the upcoming visit. The gallery wasn't suitable for a real conversation. It was too public a place, and clients or assistants might walk in. No, they needed a secluded place. Perhaps after viewing the gallery, I could invite her to my studio outside the city, Barbara thought. She had a small house on the shores of Chesapeake Bay, a 40-minute drive from the city, which she sometimes used for work and to receive important clients. That was where they could really talk. About James, about the past, about who really knows and understands him best. As Barbara planned Rebecca's visit, she didn't know that that same evening, Rebecca was telling James about her meeting with his ex-wife. She was very professional, Rebecca said, sitting next to him on the sofa. And she seems genuinely ready to put the past behind her. James frowned. And you believe this sudden transformation, after everything I've told you about her? People change, James. Maybe she just needed time. Or she's playing a role, he objected. Barbara is a master manipulator when she wants to get something she wants. I saw it dozens of times during our marriage. Do you think she wants something from me? It's just a professional collaboration. A collaboration that suddenly became possible right after she found out about our engagement party? James shook his head. Too convenient a coincidence. Rebecca thought for a moment. Well, I already agreed to visit her gallery on Thursday. It would be rude to cancel. Just promise me you'll be careful. James took her hands in his. And don't stay alone with her for too long. I know it sounds paranoid, but Barbara is unpredictable when she feels threatened. Do you think I threaten her? Rebecca smiled weakly. I think that in her distorted perception, yes, James replied seriously. Just be careful. Rebecca arrived at Barbara's gallery at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She was greeted by Barbara and several visitors looking at contemporary paintings. Welcome to Clark Gallery, Barbara greeted her warmly. Let me show you our new exhibition. They spent an hour studying the works of local artists. Barbara remained professional, demonstrating her deep knowledge of art. Rebecca couldn't help but notice that James's fears seemed exaggerated. After the visitors left, Barbara offered her tea in her office. What do you think of the collection? She asked as she poured the tea. Impressive, Rebecca replied sincerely. Especially the Martinez pieces. Barbara smiled. I have a few more of his works in my studio outside the city. If you have an hour or two, I could show them to you. It's not far, on the bay. Rebecca glanced at her watch. She had almost 4 hours before her meeting with James. That sounds interesting, but I understand your doubts, Barbara quickly added. But believe me, I really want to build a healthy relationship. Rebecca nodded. Okay, I'll call James so he doesn't worry. Of course, Barbara hid a slight smile. I'll get the car ready. Barbara's studio home turned out to be a cozy cottage with panoramic windows overlooking Chesapeake Bay. It's beautiful here, Rebecca remarked, looking at the landscape. This is my refuge, Barbara replied, heading for the kitchen. Tea, or perhaps something stronger? Tea would be wonderful. While Barbara made tea, Rebecca looked around the living room. Her gaze fell on a photograph of Barbara and James on the beach, both smiling. That was in Cape Cod. Barbara's voice caught Rebecca off guard. Our last vacation together. He always loved the ocean. Have you two traveled anywhere together yet? Just for the weekend, Rebecca replied. We're planning to go to Greece after the wedding. Greece, Barbara took a sip. We always talked about going to Italy. I guess plans change. The conversation initially revolved around art. Then Barbara asked, How did you meet James? Rebecca noticed the change in her eyes. At a charity auction. It was about a year ago. A year? Barbara raised an eyebrow. So, almost right after our divorce. Rebecca tensed up. We didn't start dating until a few months later. Really? Barbara's voice took on a sarcastic tone. He's always been so proper, at least in public. An awkward pause ensued. Has he told you about his panic attacks? Barbara asked suddenly. Or how he can go weeks without speaking if he's unhappy about something? Barbara, I think we should get back to discussing our collaboration, Rebecca replied firmly. Of course, Barbara said, standing up abruptly. I just thought you should know what you're getting yourself into. 10 years, Rebecca. I was with him for 10 years. She poured herself a whiskey. You know what he said when he left? You demand too much, Barbara. You're suffocating me. 10 years of support, patience, love, and I demand too much. Rebecca slowly got up. I think it's time for me to go. You don't understand. Barbara took a step toward her. He'll do the same thing to you, use you, and then throw you away. Our relationship is our business. Rebecca headed for the door. He's mine! Barbara suddenly shouted, breaking into a shriek. You stole him! He was supposed to come back to me! Rebecca turned around, seeing Barbara's face contorted with rage. I'll call a taxi, Rebecca said, taking out her phone. And please don't come near me. Barbara suddenly calmed down. I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. Let me offer you some coffee before you go. As an apology. She went into the kitchen. Rebecca heard the sound of cupboards opening. A minute later, Barbara returned, but not with coffee. In her hands, she held a canister that smelled strongly of gasoline. What are you doing? Rebecca stepped back, but Barbara was quicker. In one swift motion, she splashed the liquid on Rebecca. If I can't have him, then neither will you, Barbara hissed, pulling out a lighter. Rebecca froze in shock. Barbara clicked the lighter, and at that moment Rebecca rushed to the door, but slipped. There was a flash. Fire engulfed Rebecca's clothes, and the air filled with screams. Barbara stepped back, watching with empty eyes. He was mine, she said quietly, retreating to the door. Before disappearing, Barbara left a note on the table. Love cannot be shared. Firefighters arrived 20 minutes after a neighbor who had noticed smoke called them. By that time, the fire had engulfed almost the entire house. There may be a person in there, the neighbor shouted. I saw 2 cars. When the firefighters managed to get inside, they found a charred body in the living room. Paramedics pronounced him dead at the scene. An hour after the firefighters arrived, Detective Michael Lawrence arrived. Getting out of his car, he looked around the charred house and approached the fire chief. What do we have? He asked, showing his badge. 1 victim, presumed female, burned alive. The fire started in the living room. A flammable substance was used, possibly gasoline. Arson? 90% sure. We found a canister. Lawrence headed toward the officers, questioning the neighbor. This is Barbara Clark's house, said the elderly man. She doesn't come here often, usually on weekends. When was the last time you saw Miss Clark? Today, around 3 o'clock. She arrived with another woman, younger than her, with dark hair. And there's no second car now, Lawrence noted. Inside the house, the officers were collecting evidence from among the charred remains of the furniture. Detective, an officer called out to him, holding out a bag with a burnt piece of paper. On it was written, Love cannot be divided. Where did you find this? In the kitchen, under a metal tray. Lawrence took out his phone. I need to establish the identity of the deceased and find the contact details of Barbara Clark's relatives. The second car belongs to Rebecca Hill, curator of the Museum of Modern Art, one of the officers reported. Check the connections between Clark and Hill, Lawrence ordered, and I need a search warrant for Clark's apartment. By evening, Detective Lawrence was gathering information at the police station. Photos of Barbara and Rebecca appeared on the board, connected by a red thread. What do we know? He asked. Rebecca Hill, 31, Officer Jenkins replied. Engaged to James Foster, an architect. Foster, Lawrence said. Any connection to Clark? He's her ex-husband. They divorced a year ago after 10 years of marriage. 2 weeks ago, Foster announced his engagement to Hill. Classic motive, Lawrence nodded. Put Clark on the wanted list, check the airports, train stations, and bring Foster in. He's on his way, replied the other officer. And one more thing, boss. He handed Lawrence a business card. Sophia Rodriguez, a close friend of Barbara's. She says she has information about Clark's psychological state. Have her come in tomorrow morning and check Clark's bank accounts. Lawrence returned to the board with the photos. What could have driven this woman to commit such a crime? The phone rang. Lawrence listened to the message and slowly hung up. We have official confirmation, he announced. The body found in the house is Rebecca Hill. The dental records match. Lawrence walked over to the window, looking out at the night lights of Baltimore. Somewhere out there was the woman who had taken the life of her rival, and he had to find her before she struck again. In the interrogation room of the Baltimore Police Department, James Foster sat with his head in his hands. 3 hours ago, he had been informed of Rebecca's death. Now he looked like a man who had lost everything. "Mr. Foster," Detective Lawrence sat down opposite him. "I'm sorry for your loss, but we need to talk about Barbara Clark." James looked up, his eyes red and shadowed from lack of sleep. "I should have seen it coming. When Rebecca said she was going to visit her, I sensed something was wrong, but I didn't insist." "Tell me about your marriage." Lawrence gently guided him. "What led to the divorce?" 10 years, James sighed. "At first, everything was fine. Barbara was bright, passionate, talented. But gradually, her love became suffocating. She controlled my every move, was jealous of my colleagues and friends. Once, I discovered that she had installed a tracking app on my phone." "When did you decide to leave?" "After she made a scene at a corporate event, accusing my colleague of trying to seduce me. But it wasn't about that specific incident. I just realized I couldn't live like that anymore." "How did she react to the divorce?" "At first, she was hysterical and threatening. Then a sudden calm, which seemed strange. But I thought she was coping." His voice broke. "If I had known..." "When did you start your relationship with Miss Hill?" 4 months after the divorce. Rebecca was completely different. Bright, supportive. "Why did Rebecca agree to meet with Barbara?" "She thought they could have a healthy relationship." James smiled bitterly. "Rebecca always believed in the best in people." That same morning, Detective Lawrence met with Sofia Rodriguez in her office. The psychologist looked exhausted and depressed. "I should have insisted more," she said, pouring herself some water. "I saw the signs, but I didn't think it would come to this." "What signs?" Lawrence asked. "Obsessive-compulsive behavior, fixation on her ex-husband, narcissistic traits, unhealthy jealousy. Barbara couldn't accept rejection or loss of control. Divorce didn't mean the end of the relationship for her, rather, a temporary obstacle." "Do you think she planned the murder?" Sophia thought for a moment. "I'm not sure. Barbara is impulsive. I think she wanted to intimidate Rebecca, to destroy their relationship. But when she realized she couldn't control the situation," Sophia shook her head. "In her world, if she can't have something, then no one can." A search warrant for Barbara's apartment provided investigators with key evidence. In the bedroom, behind the wardrobe, they found a box of James's belongings, which she had kept as relics. On the computer, there were folders with photos taken secretly. James leaving the office, James and Rebecca in a restaurant, at home. But the most important find was the diaries. 5 notebooks filled with small handwriting. The last entries revealed a growing obsession. October 17th. Saw Jay with her today. He laughed the way he used to laugh only with me. She's stealing him, stealing our life, our future. November 2nd. He belongs to me. He always has. Does she think she can just come and take him? 10 years. I was his wife for 10 years. What does she know about him? Nothing. November 14th. Invited her to the gallery. She agreed, the naive fool. James will come back to me when he realizes his mistake, when she's gone. The diary also contained references to Barbara's parents' old house in Harford County, abandoned after their death 5 years ago. Lawrence immediately sent a SWAT team there. The 2-story wooden house stood in the woods, 20 miles from the nearest town. Officers surrounded the building at dawn. Barbara was found in the kitchen, calmly drinking coffee, as if she had been expecting them. She did not resist arrest, only asked, "Did you find my note?" At the station, Barbara remained aloof. During questioning, she admitted her guilt without hesitation. "I loved him more than she ever could," she told Lawrence. "He was my life, my world." "So you killed Rebecca Hill?" "She was a mistake," Barbara shrugged. "A temporary infatuation. James would have understood that in time. But she wouldn't listen. She wouldn't leave." "You lured her into a trap," the detective remarked. "I gave her a chance," Barbara replied. I told her the truth about him, about us. But she was so self-assured. Our relationship is our business, she mimicked Rebecca, as if I wasn't part of the story. A psychiatric evaluation diagnosed Barbara with obsessive-compulsive disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. The court found her sane, but with mental abnormalities that affected her judgment. During the trial, she remained calm, sometimes even smiling at James, who was sitting in the audience. The verdict was 25 years without parole for the first 15 years. The psychiatrist who worked with Barbara in prison noted in his reports, "The patient shows no remorse. For her, Rebecca was not a person, but an obstacle, a symbol of loss of control. In her perception, the murder was an act of restoring balance, correcting a mistake. Particularly disturbing is her conviction that James will ultimately understand and forgive her." 6 months later, Sofia Rodriguez sat in a cafe across from James Foster. He looked older than his age, with premature gray hair at his temples. "How are you?" she asked. "Day by day," he replied. "I sold the apartment. I couldn't stay there. I'm working on a project to restore a historic district. I immerse myself in the details so I don't have to think." "Are you getting professional help?" "Yes, weekly. It helps, but..." He fell silent, staring out the window. "I keep asking myself, could we have prevented this? If I hadn't been so blind, if I had insisted that Rebecca not see her..." "James, you can't blame yourself. No one could have predicted how far Barbara would go. You know what's the scariest thing? When I look at her in court, I still see the woman I once loved. How is that possible? How could I not have noticed that I was in love with a monster?" "She wasn't always like that," Sofia replied gently. "Mental illness can develop gradually. The good you saw in her doesn't make you guilty." James took out an envelope. "She sent this to me from prison. It's the third letter. I can't bring myself to read it." Sofia took the envelope. "Do you want me to?" "No." He shook his head. "Just help me get rid of it." They left the cafe and headed for the harbor. James tore the envelope into small pieces without reading it and threw it into the water. The scraps of paper swirled in the air before sinking to the dark surface, where they were picked up by the current. "I'm moving to Seattle," James said suddenly. "I got a job offer. New city, new life." Sofia nodded. "Maybe it's for the best. New beginnings." "Do you think I'll ever be able to trust again? Love again?" he asked quietly. "In time," she said, putting her hand on his shoulder. "Not now, but someday. Life goes on, James, even after tragedies like this." They stood looking at the water, where the last pieces of Barbara's letters were disappearing into the depths. The wind from the bay carried the smell of salt and freshness, a promise of change and perhaps healing. In her cell at the Baltimore Correctional Center for Women, Barbara Clark sat by the window, watching the sun set. The walls were covered with drawings. Again and again she drew the same face, James's face. In the diary, now kept by prison psychologists, there was an entry about her last session. The patient continues to live in an alternate reality where her actions were an act of love. She maintains the belief that James Foster will one day understand her motives and wait for her release. Most disturbingly, she does not consider herself a criminal, but rather a victim of circumstance. It is recommended to continue intensive therapy with an emphasis on accepting reality and taking responsibility for her actions. Barbara held a photograph in her hands, the only one she was allowed to keep. It was of her and James 10 years ago on their wedding day. On the back, she wrote, "Love does not die. Love waits."